and welcome back to Still I Rise podcast. My name is Orla McKeating. My pronouns are she, her, and I have my favourite podcaster. When I set this up, I was like, I'm not getting any white men in the chair chatting to me.
I know I fucking hate them
but
too.
Here we are.
White straight men.
Here we are. Although Sean and Luke are the only ones allowed.
Shit,
really.
sorry, I always forget.
They're all right. They're all right.
You must always come walking out of the room feeling like, oh, well, fuck my drag.
Well, episode 3, 4, and we have my favourite NI podcast.
Oh, well, thank you, Orla. I appreciate it.
Favourite one. Brings
There's not
so
many,
much joy.
Thanks.
I think there is now.
There is
now, isn't there?
I think podcasting here is becoming a bit more like there's a real community growing, which is good to see, obviously.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember, so when you were doing the Kathy Martin episode, she was talking about it whenever you used to work with her.
Uh-huh.
I remember coming in. Do you remember the 6 by Nico Bloggers brunch?
Yes.
Right. I remember coming in and you were so young. You were like a wee
tiny
baby, like in your wee bow tie. And I was like, he's a good one. And it's always because since I had a son, I'm always like role models. Underrepresent all of the stuff I'm just mad about. And I was like, he's going to make so many people.
Really?
100%.
Serious?
And I said this to you on Instagram before, like, and we spoke about it yesterday, like there's no one really like you here, and the attitude here is still so damaging.
It really, really, really is. You know, it's actually funny. Before coming here, I was actually on a shoot. So there's a girl, I don't know, would you know Claire Creative? She's a photographer. She's met Claire's son. Oh my gosh. So like,
she have a son?
Yeah, so has a son, 10 years of age. Apparently, like she lets him see all like my videos and stuff, and he loves like the makeup, and he loves like Drag Race, and he loves all like the kind of culture, and honestly, like just like so like authentic. And I was so nearly inspired because I was like, wow, like I can't believe I'm talking to a 10-year-old who is so like unapologetically themselves. Meanwhile, and then it made me think, whenever I was 10, what was I like? And it was like, no, like very much like pretending to be like a Celtic supporter, very like trying to like, what is the status quo of not like really like trying your best to blend in. Yeah, so you wouldn't stick out.
And like, I wonder, I always think...
It's a different time now, which is great, obviously, but...
It's different and it's not. And I always think I grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? Mm-hmm. So... But we were, and it's probably similar here, we're like, you can't share your identity in terms of like who you are, what you are, where you go, what school you go to. Is it? I don't know if it's still the same, is it?
No, I don't think it would be, no.
So like, but now then imagine the impact that has on your own well-being, your own self-esteem without actually being queer or being black or being, you know, disabled, visibly disabled. So like the impact that would have on who you are and how you develop. So we talked a wee bit before. So you're from Mahara.
Yeah, so Mahara, Mackerfelt.
I say rural Ireland. Is it rural Ireland?
Well, not really. I would say like it's like townland.
Right.
But so like a lot of people call us culture.
For your like English fans or global fans, just say rural Ireland.
We'll say rural.
For your Ibiza fan club.
Small town boy, Hollywood dreams. We'll go with that.
Small town boy, Hollywood dreams, right. Hollywood with 2 L's, right?
Yes.
Right.
I know.
Not
fuck me, double L. No. No. We're aiming a wee bit bigger than
So, what was your identity like growing up?
So, very much, whenever I think back, I do believe you are who you are. Like, I believe you were chosen to be the way you are. So whenever I look back at me as a kid, always very like in touch with my femininity, very flamboyant, very creative, very artistic. The things that interested me was like drawing, painting, art, anything like that. Production, shows. Like I remember like my dad, he would have worked in a factory and I always asked him to bring home cardboard so I could like paint like pantomime sets, and I would always like do like pantomime productions, you know, at the window of the living room and close the curtains and pop out, and I always loved that kind of stuff. Always found in school very much just related more to girls. Like I just got on better with girls. I was more comfortable around girls. And it's nothing to do with like girls or boys. I think sometimes we look at things as like gender, like the biology of gender, but it's more like masculinity and femininity. And I think masculinity I find very intimidating, but I always gravitated towards like soft energy. And then I think primary and all that was all very much great. And then I think it's once you start to hit that like 9, 10, you're starting to go into like the big school kind of feeling. It's more of like a You know, like I can remember even like the first time learning like, you know, about like religion and all these different things. And it's kind of when you're like, say like 6 to like 9, like I feel like you're like an emotional sponge. Kids are just so like, they're starting to really figure things out and develop. And, you know, like we lived in like a mixed neighborhood. My next door neighbors went to like a different school, which was like a Protestant school. I went to a Catholic school. Of course, I'm like, well, why are we going to different schools? You know, you're starting to ask all these questions. Then you start to hear things in the playground. You're hearing about like the difference in religion. And it was all done in a childlike way, but you're starting to hear sectarian language. You're starting to hear homophobia. You're starting to hear all these different things. But when you're a child, you're internalizing it. So you're thinking, God, I'm getting called this, or I'm being this, or people don't like them people, and so I can't be like that. Or you're starting to really kind of like panic and try to nearly like, right, okay, shut it down. And that's before you even realize, I suppose, that you're even gay. You just know, I'm outside the box and I don't want to be. I need to get back in where everybody else is.
And was that post-primary? Like, are your memories of primary school? That was common
in the primary. Primary was very much great, and I very much was that kind of person. Like I felt like, you know, like a child, like innocence. You were just innocently yourself. And then I think once I start like P6, P7, you're starting to approach first year. You start to learn all these different things. You start to see media. You start to, you know, I can still remember even seeing like the news of the world. And I think it was maybe like Will Young came out as gay. And I remember that being like such like Will Young coming out was like nearly like as if he was coming out and saying that he was dying. That it was this big, like nearly sad, somber kind of like story, like, and there was this shame around it and stuff. And I can remember all these things, and it sounds stupid, but you remember them. It's like you bookmark it, and you're like, oh. And then whenever it's coming into like school, now I didn't know I was gay. You do and you don't.
Yeah.
Like, because I think, you know, when you're a kid, you don't understand sexuality. You don't really have like sexual feelings. So I think the connection that's more later on in your adolescent years. You know, like with the thing of like attraction, or like who are you attracted to, but you know you're different, if you get me.
And then I wonder, like, do you internalise that shame? Like that is a shame is that a shame that you carry forever? Like, is that something that is so conditioned in who you are? And then how does that impact? Because from the outside, right?
Yeah.
You're Gerry Lavz, like you're a public figure. I mean, obviously you're an influencer, social media star, if you can say that. You're a DJ, you host events. You don't do drag. You host drag shows, do you?
I've done like hosted like drag brunches, but no, I couldn't move like them.
So in loads of ways, it's incredible that you are so you. Like, you're really unapologetically you to the public eye.
Yes.
So when the doors are closed,
Who is
Gerry Lavz?
So it's kind of like, it's this whole like, I believe everybody, we all have like a front stage, backstage, and no matter who you are, what kind of like your occupation or whatever, like, you know, somebody has their like best face, like, you know, even if it's like they're the front of house in an office, like, hello, like, welcome, like they act a certain way, you keep your personal stuff to the back, and then it's when you go home, that's whenever you're kind of your vulnerable self. I feel like for me, I kind of developed this thing where it was nearly like, if you can wear a mask really good, people won't dig too hard. So if you really project that you're really confident, people won't really then go digging looking for the insecurity or the weak spot. If you show that you're owning it, it's that kind of, I was always kind of told that, you know, you kind of just like not put a mask on, but like you showbiz, tits and teeth.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
And
I always swear by that, tits and teeth.
And there's an element to that in everyone.
Yeah.
Because everyone has insecurities. Yeah. Everyone has really shitty times. Everyone has low moments. And then talking about home. So when you're at home, when the doors close. So from the outside, I see a really, and this is very much Instagram highlights.
Yeah,
like,
no,
of course, like the backstage.
Yeah.
But I see a really loving family, a really accepting Irish mum.
Yes.
A really, like, I assume that you're safe in your house. Like,
100%.
You know?
100%.
And it's like you come home to you. Like, that's what I see from the outset. And that's amazing.
Yeah. So like I'm very, very lucky, I would say. So I would say, I think generationally, like, you know, like my parents are like an older generation, so they're not like, you know, I don't think they're going to join the YMCA and are going to be like, you know, like with a feather boa. Like they're, you know, they're a different time period, but they're very accepting and respecting of who I am. You know, my mom, I say, would be more cautious, just not because of me or the way I live my life. She just worries a lot about me. She'd be very overprotective, so she's always worried about how the world will perceive me. And my dad, ironically enough, because I think for a lot of kids, it's the fears like coming out to your dad. A lot of kids, you know, their fathers disown them. You know, that's kind of the narrative that you always often hear, where a lot of like gay kids would relate to. But for me, I'm very, very lucky that my dad actually gave me the best advice ever. I remember whenever I came out, and it wasn't came out, it was like, I wasn't sure. I was confused in my sexuality, and I was like, I'm not sure. I think I like boys or whatever. And he was the first person I told. Don't know why. I just felt that I could go to him with it. And he said to me, look, son, you know, I just want to tell you that like life is very, very hard. And, you know, when you come to a crossroad, when you take a left, it's kind of hard to turn back and take a right. So if you know who you are and this is the life you want to live, it's going to come with certain adversities. Be prepared for that. But you need to know who you are. Do you know, like, make sure you know who you are. Go and figure out and go like experiment or be who you need to be to find out who you are, essentially. But then he goes, but do not waste a second figuring that out, because your life is going to go by just like that. And your happiness matters. So go and find the thing that makes you happy. Find who you are. He was very always encouraging of that.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's bare minimum, really, isn't it?
No,
like,
I know.
That's amazing. And I think that's really good advice for any father, for anyone,
very
isn't it?
Very rational, which I appreciate. Totally. Rational
and who
advice.
Actually knows themselves.
Yeah.
Like, do you know yourself?
No, I think you're always learning. I don't think you ever fully know.
Yeah. And like, who are you? Like, if you could describe yourself in 5 words now, would you be able to do that? Because I feel like identity is because as you say, like, I have the mask for work, I have the mask as a parent, I have the banter one with my mates from years ago.
I feel like we're very multifaceted. I feel like we have so many different layers of who we are.
Lost, yeah.
But I'd say overall, I would likely say empathetic.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's something I've only really kind of really identified or developed in the past maybe like 4 to 5 years. Empathetic. Funny, like I like, by funny I mean I have a great sense of humor. I can make a joke at myself. Like, I think laughter is such a great medicine. I feel like there's not enough joy and there's not enough laughter in the world, and I believe anything can be turned into humor. I believe, obviously depending on where it's coming from. So empathetic, funny. I would say strong-minded, very headstrong. Like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm very determined. Ambitious and creative. And a bitch. No.
You mean like 5, Gerry? You can't have yourself.
No. But I'd say just all that kind of, but empathetic would be I'd say empathetic's the big one for me. I really feel like people's energy. And I think most people who come from some sort of a social minority group they've always felt that like they're the UFO that's just landed on planet Earth and everybody's looking at them like, what the fuck? And we've all went through different things. So my entire life, I've never been racist. I've never been, had any kind of like anti-Semitic views. I've never been sectarian or, anything really. I've always been very curious and I've always embraced diversity. But that likely is only because I've seen similarity.
Yeah. Totally.
Do you get what I mean? So if I wasn't, I don't know what way I would think. Because I think the problem is we're not going to break a stigma if we I feel like there's this, it's nearly like a tug of war. I always say, where does hatred come from? Hatred comes from fear. That's what I've learned throughout the years. It's the fear of something that is different. What the fuck could I have in common with that? That's what people kind of think. So they nearly see it as like opposition. And then that's where like the prejudice and the stereotyping and all this kind of comes into play. But I think that it's a fear. It's not like, but how do you break down the fear? If I'm going to be so passive aggressive back at you, we're not going to integrate. integration is the key, and how to like, you know, so people will be ignorant, but allow them to be ignorant, correct it so they can learn from it. I think sometimes, I don't think that you should show ignorance grace, but do you get what how are we meant to move forward? That's what I've realized. I often find all of this is kind of like a window period. The window opens, equality, equal opportunities, people are a lot more liberal minded, then it closes again. Now we're seeing so many things with like the trans agenda, with politics, where we're trying to nearly like this like propaganda that's being like spat out about, you know, trans people as if they're the enemy, but that's just diversion. But like it's how do you get where this is what really aggravates me.
It's so wild, and I think like the systems, and we've talked about this before in the podcast, like it's the systems that are distracting, that are divisive, that are the slabbers.
Yeah,
you know?
100%.
So it's like, how can we as people, whenever, you know, I understand if as you say, like I would much prefer, and I feel someone is safer if they're actually saying to me, no, I don't like gay people, I don't like black people, than someone who's like, no, I respect everyone, I don't see colour. Because they're the most dangerous, and very often they're the ones making the decisions.
Yeah,
they're the ones like, so I think it's how do we push back against the institutional and systemic inequalities that exist. And I think the trans agenda is being used to distract, as you say,
100%.
from these systems. Like, and it's, you know, in a world where there's 8 billionaires.
Yeah.
And they're blaming that on immigration. They're blaming that on people finding shelter, you know. So they just blame it on the most vulnerable and the most vilified groups.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that, being someone who is in the public eye? So I think, you know, you'll have people online probably. I don't know, I suspect that's a bit easier. Do you just delete and block? How do you deal with the people in real life compared with online who are pushing back? Or are there people who do?
So this is a bit of like a complex one. I feel like I don't really deal with it because I'm immune to it. And by that, what I mean is I think that like, and I'm not saying this is like get a violin out. Like the reality is I'm so desensitized to homophobia because I have got homophobia my whole life. Genuinely, like you could call me like any homophobic slur. It won't, like I remember maybe whenever I was a teenager, I nearly felt like it was like being kicked in the stomach, and now I wouldn't even blink. Do you know? It's like, you know, like women are being like slut shamed, and like, you know, such derogatory language is being used towards women. Women are nearly like immune to it because this is the norm.
Isn't that wild?
It's not fucked. It's so messed up.
There's a Peggy McIntosh talks about the knapsack of privilege, right? And it's in relation to white privilege.
Yeah.
But it's how whenever, so me, as there's obviously all the intersectionalities that exist, but my knapsack is pretty light. I don't carry a lot of weight. But then I wonder, like, for you to be immune to that, how much do you carry? How much do you underrepresented or marginalised or vilified? I'm not saying you're vilified, but
no,
like,
I know, but
where the world has come at you so much that you don't even feel a hate crime. How can we, I'm assuming like there's the F word and like the words that most people don't know are hate crimes. How do we as a society, how do we influence a society who aren't on social media, who don't have a gay son, who don't really care, to try and get their heads around the impact that this has, not just in the LGBTQ plus group, but in society at large? Because I think if no one's free until we're all free.
No, this is it. And do you know what? It's and this is the thing. It's like so this is the thing. How I'm speaking here right now, this is my personal views. This is my personal outlook. This is based on my personal experiences in life. So I can't really speak on behalf of like a community. Do you know what I mean? So for me, what I have found, this is just an example of a story. I remember going to a wedding. So there would have been like a lot of heterosexual men at this wedding, you know, like cowboy kind of fellas, you know, like your Jack the Lads and all that kind of men. And, you know, the thing with me is I do have a sense of humor. So you can cry. But this is what I've learned is like a good way to meet in the middle is not to take yourself too serious. So the one thing that you could very misunderstand with me is don't mistaken my femininity as weakness because I'm no Tinkerbell bitch. Let me tell you that there. I will fucking get on the level, no baller. And you see if there was like a grip, like a full rugby team in front of me, like not like that, but like I'll take them on. We've said this before. Like I'm like no baller to me. I will literally like I might not be as strong or bigger or masculine, but like I can defend myself.
And that's an amazing sense of self. So what your dad advised you, you've taken on.
Taking
like,
that on. And then
that.
I think as well, just learning the history. I think the history is the most important part. So I think I came out and that was grand and whatever and blah, 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 blah. And then I started to just kind of really become more and more and more out of my shell. And to be honest, I was always very much like celebrated in ways, but you always had that wee, like that dark cloud in the corner. So I didn't get it hard either, but it wasn't easy. And, you know, the thing for me is with that incident with the people at the wedding, what I found is, you know, I don't
Were
take
they
myself,
giving you jip?
So, like, a bit of jip, but it was done with like a joke.
Aye.
But the thing was they were surprised by how I reacted back. So I reacted back with a joke, but then threw a joke at them. And then there was like nearly like a banter exchange. And then I ended up having really great conversations with these people. And they're like, do you know what? And this is what they said. They're like, do you know what? Like, I'm really, really surprised. Like, I didn't think that I would get along with someone like you. And now I could turn around and be offended by that, but I have to understand this is coming from a place of ignorance. It's not their fault. This is what they've been built up to think or how they look at the world, and I look at the world differently. But if we're going to agree to disagree, you know, I can't attack back. So I was just like, you know, like, well, like, look, you know, this is the thing. I hope you can realize, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. You would be surprised, you know, like I like football as well. Like I know a lot about cars. Like I would have similarities to these people. So don't think just because I'm gay that you're like labeling me and putting me in a box and I would have nothing in common with you. And then we ended up getting on really well. And then one of them thought that like as a joke, they then used like the F word. And then that was I thought I could be offended or I could use an opportunity to educate somebody, even though it's not my place to. I just turn around and goes, look, I'm just going to let you know, like, we get on really well and we've had a great weekend and like, you know, I can take a joke, but that's derogatory and you can't say that. And like, trust me, like if you said that to some people, the impact that would have on, and they're like, God, I didn't realize, like, I'm sorry, like, apologize. Great. So things it's all about how you handle like managing relationships, managing communication, managing differences. You know, we all have a part to play in it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if someone's not playing ball, so if I'm trying to be understanding, and it's just sheer like bigotry and homophobia and evil and hatred, I won't fuck with it.
Yeah, that's it. And like I suppose
it's a lost cause. It's not worth my energy.
And I always think it's not up to you to educate, but like you pick and choose. Yeah. You can say a sentence and work it out. And I again think
you have to sometimes make the mistake and say the wrong thing to then learn how to say the right thing. Like even though I was never like say like, you know, I've never had like a racist bone in my body. I haven't always got it right. I thought cultural appropriation was okay. You know, there was a time period where people were doing, say, like, for instance, with Halloween, like blackface and, you know, all these different things. And people thought, like, oh, well, like, I'm not being racist. And it's like, but, like, that is. It is.
And it's awareness,
but it's maybe not done with, like, the intention of hatred, but it's still that ignorance. Do you know? And how do we unlearn, you know?
That's it. Because...
You know, you have to be able to, like, embrace, like, look... I might have like some ignorance towards this group or that group or whatever, but that's how it's all about educating ourselves.
Yeah. And like
and every day is school day.
Every day, like literally every day. And I always think like, I don't love the word ally. For context, I would use it quite a bit. I kind of prefer co-conspirator or advocate. Because it's advocate, like, advocate's a good one. I think allyship is overused and under-actioned. Yeah. But I think whenever we are supporting groups, we need to be aware that we are going to say the wrong thing. We are going to do 100%. The wrong thing. And fragility, defensiveness needs to be at the door. Yeah. And that's how, because, and that's what I was going to say about the guys at the wedding as an example. So representation. Like, had they ever seen someone like you in a book?
But also, have they ever met anybody like me in their life? Likely not. Do you know what I mean?
Because of their wee bubble and the messages that we're given, and the messages about the queer community, about about Arab men. I find that one a really big one. About now Jewish people. About, there's a lot. So it's being aware of like how those stereotypes and how that prejudice shows up, and how we're getting literally breadcrumbed into these thought processes, these assumptions, these discriminatory thoughts, 100%. Which we all have. And Gerry, I would actually say I'm more racist than not racist because, well, like I'm not even, this is another podcast episode, but we had a good chat on the last one about how white supremacy shows up and how we feed into white supremacist systems. And once you see things, you can't unsee them. And I suppose it's like... nearly what I love about you is you're like having the crack, having the banter, and that's a flipping class way to educate. My go-to very often is get really frustrated and really angry and not know what to do and go off on one, but actually look at the world we live in. So how do we navigate it without segregating even further?
I think...
Do you know what I mean?
You can't go around knocking door to door. Do you know what I mean? It's government. It's like, where does everything begin? It begins in education. That's where I feel like number one, religion, and this is the thing, because I can't turn around and say something about, say, like my issues, but then I'm starting to then nearly like, if I'm bashing religion, that's not what this is. But I think religion really is at the forefront now, and some people would think as it should be. I think religion is such like a great guide. Like there's like, it could be a guideline for like your moral compass. I'm a very spiritual person as well, so I do believe in like afterlife, and I suppose, but my thing is, mine is more of like a broader spectrum. I don't believe in like I suppose maybe like literal. I believe that religion, for me personally anyway, religion's more like open to interpretation. It's a personal thing, and I don't think anybody. So I don't believe like, say, like, like Adam and Eve and I'm not saying like, oh, that's gospel. Do you know? I'd be more like, I believe in something, and I believe that we're meant to like, be good people and be kind and be cash. But the thing is, what I find with religion teachings, and I suppose I have a very conflicted relationship with it, is, LOL, like the Mother Mary, no pun intended, there was no room in the inn for me.
Well, that's it.
Like, you know what I mean?
If you look at the Christianity and the Christians in the world, let's remember, Jesus was a refugee.
But then I'm like, where did that come from? If you think of religion, like so many, like it's been interpreted by like, mankind through so many generations. So that might not have always been the way.
100%.
And I don't believe that God thinks that. That's just my view. I believe that everybody's meant to be different. We're meant to be who we are. We're meant to be celebrated for being, diverse. But as long as you are a good person.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
We will all make mistakes and we will all make bad choices, but as long as you are a good person with a pure heart, and I believe that is what will carry you through life. That's just me personally. But with religion and education at such a young age, because of like how literal it is, a lot of things get ignored. So for instance, like, like there's no gay sex education, there's no LGBT history taught, there is no, like, it's like as if we don't exist.
Yeah, exactly. And then they wonder why people have these attitudes whenever they're older. And I always think like faith is great, organised religion, where there's power, where there's money, where there's capitalism. Like obviously that's not going to end well. No. Like, sorry, but how can there be kids who can't afford to eat when there's people running about in like gold?
Yeah.
And then in terms of education, so I would work quite a lot in schools. I would kind of support schools through things. And I suppose like in terms of representation, we have such a long way to go in kids' resources, kids' books. It is getting a little bit better. I'm not sure of the stats now but certainly with non-white characters, it's lowest it's ever been since 2017. And I wonder, like, what was your experience in terms, was representation, did it matter? Did you feel like you belonged? Were you nearly...
No.
You didn't?
No.
From the start?
From the get-go.
You felt othered?
From the get-go, yeah.
And do you think there's any change in that?
Oh God, yeah. Well, not in education,
Yeah.
but in media, yeah, 100%. But I think so. For me, like, you know, whenever I think who did I look up to, like as tacky as this may sound, Gillian Simmons and Katie Price,
Yeah.
and Jodie Marsh.
And Jodie Marsh, do you remember
Love
her?
Jodie Marsh.
What happened to her?
She just became like a animal rights activist. And I think
did
she has
she?
like a petting farm now.
Does she?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
Big into the animals. Yeah.
Do you remember her belt thing?
The belt? Oh
my
Done
God.
it before. Yeah.
Yeah, you have. You definitely have.
But like, so I like a lot of women I looked up to, but I loved I think because I was so ashamed of who I was, I really masked behind a big caricature. So that's why I love like Graham Norton, Lily Savage, Gillian Simmons, Alan Carr, Katie Price. I know as people might laugh at that, but like I just loved her, the Jordan alter ego. You know, it was so like Betty Boop.
Have you met Jordan?
Yes.
And what was she like?
Lovely.
Good.
Yeah,
I'd
really
say
nice.
she'd be signed.
Yeah, lovely.
And then I wonder, because I would I wonder about educators.
Like, you know, the way, for instance, like, you know, you didn't see gay people in sport. You didn't see, like, if you seen gay people in music coming out, it was nearly like bad branding for the boy band. It was nearly like a shame thing. So there was a circle of shame always around it, like with Will Young, you know, with Mark from Westlife, you know, like that was always
from Westlife,
Mark from Westlife, yeah. And then Stephen Gately, like, you know, there was always this like dark cloud around it.
100%. Because they're not the brand. Like, basically, they want girls.
The girl, yeah.
Which I bet you is the same. I bet you that hasn't changed that much.
No,
Boy bands are for girls.
Yeah.
And then, like, I would say teachers, educators who don't have a clue. Now, they're not going to have a clue because they're not trained. As you say, like, this training, this history needs to be taught, needs to be understood. How would you have loved teachers to be when you were at school and when you were who you were? You know, what could have been better? And how could teachers do better now?
Yeah, like, so I would say, like, the school I went to was a really, really good school, and I have a lot of really fond memories. But like, no matter what, like, you know, it's in the blueprint. Like, if you were gay growing up in the time period I was growing up, you were going to be subjected to homophobia by peers or because culturally within media, within all the different things around us, but then no actual education on it. Yeah. You know, so we're not being properly educated on it. People are being educated through tabloids, through what they're seeing on TV. Gay people were always the punchline of the joke. Gay people were seen as like predatory or promiscuous or this or that, or there was this kind of narrative that we're camp, that we're flamboyant, that we're feminine, or, you know, there's all these kind of negative stereotypes that surrounded gay men. So often what you found was, if you felt that you were gay or you were coming to terms with your sexuality, you stumped on it, like you really suppressed it. But then there was no positive representation. So you weren't being taught about all the amazing things that like queer people have done before us. We weren't taught about the Stonewall riots.
Yes.
You know, we weren't taught correctly about the AIDS epidemic. Instead, there still was that negative like propaganda, you know, like when you even like, you know, like that's why programs like now like Pose, like the ballroom scene, like this is what was the one? It's a Sin, is it? With Ollie from Years and Years. You know, like these shows are so important, and a lot of this I'm only kind of really seeing. I suppose I think I've only started to really educate myself on it in the past, I'd say 5 to 6 years. I think I came out and then I didn't know how to be gay.
And like, that's it. It's a movement.
And I learned everything the wrong way.
Did you?
Yeah, because there was no guidance.
Yeah.
I think that happens to a lot of people, and there's a lot, and then I think a lot of gay people carry a lot of shame with that. Yeah. Because, you know, you're just, it's kind of like, you know, this thing that you're told makes you feel like it's something that you're meant to be ashamed of, and you don't really, you know, if you think about it, like you're a fucking child, and then you become a teenager, and then you're experiencing all these different feelings, and then you get the courage to actually come out, and then it's like, oh wait a minute, like how do I navigate through the world? And then you're still dealing with the shit that you dealt with when you were a teenager. You know, it's not easy. Dating's not easy. Like, there's so many things that aren't easy. There's not really spaces for us to be ourselves. You know, we're always, it's like, oh, we're like, nearly, are we accepted or are we just tolerated in society? Tolerated, like, just like, you know, like, I always got a lot of the time, even whenever I wasn't fully myself, like, you know, I was gay and people knew I was gay. I was like, you know, you're easy enough to get along with because you're not like them other gays. And I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean? And just, I was always just a kick in the teeth and a dent and don't be too gay, don't be too this, don't be too, like always being told of how to be or how to conduct yourself, how to carry yourself. Don't laugh too much, don't speak too soft, don't do this, don't do that. It's just always been the narrative. And if you ask most gay people, no matter what age they are, in their core belief is shame. And still to this day, as unapologetically me that I am, and how confident I am, and how I am very, very comfortable in my own skin, and I love who I am, and I am proud of what I have came through, and I am proud of the person that I am. I'm proud to have integrity. I'm proud to, you know, be empathetic and to be compassionate as a person. And I know I can see it now. But the damage was done. And the core belief, when I look in the mirror, I'll still always feel shame likely to the day I die.
Do you think till the day you die?
It's because it was developed when you were a child.
Yeah.
Do you think you can unlearn that? I don't think you can.
Do you not?
No. It's your core belief.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it?
And this is what makes me so sad, is like people don't realise, like, with kids especially, it's like the damage. That's the sad part, like the damage, you don't realize, like it's full impact.
Yeah.
And it's just a shitty word that maybe someone's saying just to be the funny person in the group. Or it's, you know, like let's make fun of him for a laugh, just so my friends think I'm funny. Or let's bring him down a peg. Like but and they go on about their life and they don't even realise the damage they've done.
Yeah. And like
there's people I've met, say, for instance, maybe like 10, 15 years later that maybe would have been in school and they would have been the people calling me names and they're like, well, like, what's the crack? And I'm like, oh, well, like, how are you? But I'll always remember them for what they said. I'll always remember that. And they forgot it.
That's it.
It had
so
no
casual,
impact.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's so
casual and normalised.
And it's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. That's just the way it is.
It's very forgiving of you not to.
Gets you nowhere, though.
It doesn't get you anywhere.
Gets you nowhere.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. So then, like, what you've achieved, despite and as well as carrying that, is it's incredible.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Well, like, did you have things that you wanted to achieve? Because you didn't. It sounds like you didn't have a lot of role models growing up.
No,
and yet, like, you wanted.
Well, like Jodie Marsh.
Jodie Marsh was a good,
Jodie Marsh
exactly.
Back then.
And Julian Simmons, Well, you've worn your belt, so that worked. Jodie Marsh was a good wee role model for you. Julian Simmons, you're like a wee micro Julian now.
Gandhi, I'm like, fuck him.
So
no, it was always more like I loved pop culture though. But pop culture to me was an escapism.
Right. And did you read Pop Bitch? Do you still read Pop Bitch?
No, not anymore. No, but
I
read it. I loved like OK Magazine, Hello, and all that. There, I loved I loved it all.
Still or not?
Still, oh
it's
God,
OK Magazine, still a thing.
Still going,
So, and that's where I think you're just so important as a figure here, because I know. I know for a fact, because I see kids. I've been in schools. I saw a kid who there was just so much pushback going on at home where they couldn't be themselves, where they couldn't be, you know, they couldn't exist.
Yeah. And by the way, can I just say, by the way, as well, I'm lucky. So I don't want what I'm saying here to sound like a permie.
No.
I'm just like, that's just how my life went, and that's kind of the impact that it has on me. So imagine that there's a child out there that in school they're not being seen. There's no representation. It's like as if they don't exist. They feel invisible. And then imagine that they're going into like a household where there's homophobia. Imagine.
And it is so casual,
and when you really break it down, like, what is the thing that we've the ignorance over? What is the thing that's so offensive? What is the thing that's so threatening here? Love.
Yeah, that's exactly
really.
It. That is exactly it, and it's
like
fear,
it's love.
And it's ignorant. Yeah, that's it.
And also, it's who they choose to love. What does that say about their integrity? What does that say about their sense of like that is not all like where, you know, people just box people in as if like, oh right, well they're gay, so that's just them, full stop. Like, there's so much more to somebody than their sexuality.
Yeah, your
sexuality only actually has any kind of relation to somebody that you're romantically interested in or in a relationship with. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So say if I'm gonna let's just say something different. Say for instance, like I've loads of friends, you know, from like so many different walks of life. But say like, you know, like a female who is a lesbian, okay? Her being a lesbian has no significance on mine and her relationship, or somebody that is straight, because that's a friendship. I'm not in a relationship with them. So why, you know, how they choose to live their life, or who they're romantic with, or who they're in a relationship with, is none of my business.
And it's so inappropriate, isn't it?
It's so weird.
Because you wouldn't say to someone hetero, like,
hetero,
I don't
so
like the
weird.
way you have sex, so
like,
I'm
no,
gonna like back
literally,
off.
oh my God, you're fucking straight. Like, you wouldn't say it. So I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's so wild. But I just know that, and I really can't emphasise it enough, that you do save lives. And I have said this on Instagram, like you do. There's no doubt about it, because you're that role model.
I think I have imposter syndrome, so I'll never be able to actually like absorb that, unfortunately. But I appreciate you saying it. Yeah.
And I just think that the more of you and the more representation that we get, and then I wonder your thoughts on then, how do we encourage then adults who, everyone, I think, kind of, how do we encourage adults to normalise the conversations around LGBTQ plus history, around representation, even if, like, oh, but we don't have any gay people in our whatever that is, but how can we normalise that in the home? Because is it books? Is it food? Is it like supporting like all of the parts of the LGBTQ plus culture? Because what is that culture, and how can we normalise that to remove the fear, to remove the ignorance, to remove what you went through on other people? Because I kind of feel like, are you the role model you needed?
Oh. Yeah, no, I will say, no, I am, yeah, 100%. And I think that's why, even whenever I'm saying about the mask and I'll push, like, it's nearly like, I don't want to say a superhero, because that's a wee bit like,
no, I love
Catwoman.
Because I remember my therapist being like, close your eyes, right? And she made me go back.
Oh, don't, I think I've done this. Is this go to your younger self? Oh my God.
And just take your chat, and just, she was just like, just make it feel.
I've done that before.
Make him feel seen. And so, yeah, and that's why I do think you're really authentic in what you do. So, LGBTQ plus culture in the home, in schools. How can we do it?
So,
how do we navigate it?
I think, first of all, I think the key is like, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? But we need to get built in here, right? The key is somebody shouting from one end and somebody shouting. What I've learned is, shouting is noise, and noise is not communication. So in order for like cultures, diversity, different walks of life to integrate, it needs to not come from like, we need to be seen, we need to be did it. Like the arguing's not helping from either end. It's two agendas being pushed, and it's just clashing. Meanwhile, it needs to filter into the mainstream. So we need to be seen. So I do think we have came a long way. When you do see like the success of shows like Pose, like Pose massively. I didn't have a clue about the ballroom scene. Paris is Burning. I think Paris is Burning should be in every school. Yeah. Every secondary education, Paris is Burning should be taught, or like they should be made to watch it. Because the thing is, when you think about it, I remember being a kid, and say, for instance, if there was maybe a scene in, say, Coronation Street or something like that there, and it was maybe like a scene of like maybe like a gay relationship or something like that there. And I remember always that feeling where like you'd sit and you're kind of like looking over to see how like your parents was reacting to that scene or whatever. But I think things being in the mainstream, it allows it to sit with people. And if people let's be real, somebody might watch it and be a bit like, it might make them feel away because of their own ignorance or whatever. But eventually, the more you see something, if you think of it like this, and this is going to sound, I hope this doesn't get taken out of context in the wrong way. But say, for instance, if we were to go to like a different cultured country, say if we were to go to Japan, right? And you're walking down the street in Japan, most people there, right, predominantly are Japanese. You are going to stick out like a sore thumb. So they will notice you. Not for bad, not for good, but you will be noticed. Still to this day, people like to ignore this. But the problem is, it's the ignorance. By literally ignoring that this exists. If you were walking down Belfast Street right now, right, and if you seen somebody who was mixed race or black, right, people are afraid to use the word black. People are, it's nearly like, oh, the fear. You would notice it because it is not we are not multicultural here. Yeah. So you will notice it, and it is important that you notice it. And it's the same with if somebody's walking down the street that maybe, you know, is like visibly maybe more like feminine or maybe like whatever kind of way where they look different. It's important to acknowledge that difference. We live in this world where we choose to turn blind eyes to it.
Yeah.
Homophobia doesn't exist. No, people aren't racist. Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, no, I'm fine with I'm fine with like colored people, and it's like it's nearly like a golf ball in their throat to say colored people.
I have a black friend.
Like it's
so wild.
But it's like don't be it's like, but it's fear of being ignorant, but also you're being even more ignorant by being like that because you're literally ignoring that it exists.
That's it. And I think
you're ignoring you're ignoring a completely different ethnicity. You're ignoring a completely different sexuality. You're as if it doesn't exist. It's like we're all like carbon copies. Like, no.
Yeah.
But then whenever you go to places like London or Paris or different cities where if you look at the blend, it excites me so much.
It's real life though. Like, we're not global citizens here.
No.
And we're not there yet. And like,
no. And the thing is, I think people, whenever I say it, people think nearly like, oh God, that's bad to say it. But the thing is, we're a wee island. We're Ireland. You know, like we are predominantly white. We are predominantly heterosexual. So, you know... And we are a bit more backward and we are a bit more 100%. Reserved. And I don't always, like people say it as if it's a negative. It's not a negative, it's just the way we are. Yeah. But slowly but surely when things become more integrated, only good things can come from integration, not bad.
Yeah, that's it.
So don't be afraid of it.
Well, that's it, exactly. But then it's noticing why we're afraid. So taking the time to be like, well, actually... Yeah. This is what we're getting fed. Yeah. All the time.
It's the media.
The way the media talk.
So if you think about it, if you're not getting it in education where it should be, right? Proper education, you're getting it from everything else. From political propaganda.
Yes. From
tabloids, from the media, from television shows, you know, like, you know. And if you think about it, like a television show could be created by somebody that maybe has like a homophobic 100%. Ideology, so that 100%. They've completely base... Yeah. Like, you know, they're doing that deliberately. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, but that's what we're taking as gospel. It's the same as, like, say, for instance, even like the subject of sex education. Sex education isn't taught in schools. Where are people learning about sex? Porn.
Yeah. And it's so damaging.
Which is so damaging. Like, do you know what I mean?
It's so wild. Yeah.
So we're meant to be learning it correctly, and we're not, because schools like to bury their heads in the sand and pretend that it doesn't exist. That gay people don't exist. And it's not like in a homophobic, it's the fear.
But that is homophobic, I think.
Fear of saying the wrong thing. Yeah. Fear of teaching it incorrectly. Fear, but like we have to make mistakes before we can learn to make rights. Yeah. But that's progress. What we're doing now is not progress. Yeah. But then it's allowing all this noise and the media. It's scary at the minute. And as I say about the window, it's happening again. So for instance, I'd say homophobic abuse online, really bad at the minute.
Is it?
For the past, I'd say year and a half. Okay. Before, wouldn't have been that bad. Yeah. It's coming again. It's coming around again. We're now being pushed back in again.
How do we become better active bystanders?
I think, you know, and I think for every gay person or for anybody in the LGBT, I think, community, I feel like everybody's answer is going to be different. Yeah. So totally. I really want to emphasize that what I say isn't like, I think it's important to ask everybody that question. For me personally, I just appreciate people who are at least, you see, if you're curious, if you have the intention to, you're curious to find out more, you're curious to find out how you can be a better advocate, you know, and showing like an interest, like you believe like your ethos is that you believe everybody, no matter who they are, should be treated equally, but you're also prepared to challenge your own maybe like conditioned ignorances or this or that. That's enough for me.
Brilliant. What's your favourite book? We always end our podcast with, was there a book that changed your... Are you a reader?
Yeah. Well,
is there a book that changed your life? Is there a favourite book? Is there one you're reading? And it doesn't have to be about anything we spoke about, just a book.
Well, the one I always kind of gravitate towards is The Great Gatsby, as cliche as it is. I just love the whole, like, kind of like the dreamer kind of side of it. Loved The Great Gatsby. But I also loved, and this is going to be a wee bit random, now I hated actually reading the book, but I loved the story of it. Jane Eyre.
Oh, did you?
Loved that. Yeah, I know, how random. Like,
it's quite on brand though.
Jodie Marsh fan, but loves Jane Eyre.
There's definitely, no, that makes sense. There's
Like,
definitely
do you know
something
what
there, Gerry. Look.
But I love the reason versus passion.
That's amazing. Well, look, Gerry, thank you so much.
Oh my God, Orla, thank you.
You are a legend. I
Thank
will
you.
continue to like all your stories and send you voice notes.
Yes,
and
I know.
do think,
And I think what you're doing here is great, by the way.
It's class.
Yeah.
I really, genuinely, authentically want to like get a Gerry voodoo doll and get rid of all that shame, because you're just an incredible human.
Yeah,
and don't ever change.
I appreciate, but but the thing is, it's not a. I don't look at it as a negative thing. I don't believe it. I don't actually believe it.
Okay, so it's a part of you, but it's not.
Just it's the scar.
And here
it's
also
the scar.
I think a voodoo doll is cultural appropriation. So there we go. We're all
really?
learning.
Yeah.
And we'll end it at that. But thank you so much, you absolute legend. And thank you.